something super important to talk about before the Mishkan.
What do you have in mind?
So this week, Parashat Vayakhel, and as we know, most usually Parashat Vayakhel and Pekudei go together, and they teach us about the building of the Mishkan. And if I ask you what is Parashat Vayakhel about, you'd say it's about the building of the Mishkan. However, when you look at the beginning of Parashat Vayakhel, the word Vayakhel, gathering, when Moshe gathered Am Yisrael, he actually gathered them for a different reason, not for building the Mishkan. When you look at the Psukim, Moshe Rabbeinu gathered Am Yisrael in order to teach them the important Mitzvah of Shabbos. And this is interesting for a few reasons. First of all, this is not the first time we are seeing the commandment about Shabbos. We've seen Shabbos since the beginning of the Torah. We've seen it in Sefer Bereshis. We've seen it when Am Yisrael went out of Mitzrayim by the man, when they were commanded to take a double portion on Friday and rest on Shabbos. We've seen it, of course, in Aseret HaDibrot, and we've also seen it in Parshat Kitisa, connected to the building of the Mishkan. So, number one, why does Moshe Rabbeinu over here again command Am Yisrael about this mitzvah of Shabbos, especially when these are very few psukim? It's not elaborated like it was back in Parashat Kitisa. But more importantly, we have to ask, what is their relationship? What is the connection between the Mishkan and Shabbos? We know that in this week's Parsha, from the first pasuk, the Gemara learns that we have 39 melachos we're not allowed to do on Shabbos. The 39 fundamental things that we have to refrain from doing on Shabbos, the number 39 is learned from this pasuk, from this week's parasha. So what is the connection between the Mishkan and Shabbos? Why is it repeated in the beginning of this week's parasha? And what is Shabbos about?
You know, it's interesting that Shabbos here, as you said, is also a very short description. But also when we look at the words and compare them to, for example, Parashat Kitisa, we'll see something interesting. In Parashat Kitisa and in other places, the focus of the psukim is Shabbos. It's about Shabbos. It's teaching us what Shabbos is, how to keep Shabbos. Here, Shabbos is mentioned, but it doesn't seem to be the actual focus. Actually, even more interestingly, if we look at the first pasuk, we see that Moshe comes and gathers Am Yisrael and turns to them and says, these are the things that you're supposed to do. And then says Shabbos. Now, usually in our mind, Shabbos is not what you're supposed to do. It's what you're supposed to not do, right? If this is the list of what you're supposed to do, la'asototam, Shabbos is exactly when you're supposed to rest. You're not supposed to be doing. You're not supposed to be in asiyah. You're supposed to be in menucha. So what are these psukim actually about? If we look carefully, we see the focus of the psukim is not Shabbos, it's the 6 days. Sheshet yamim te'aseh melacha, ubayom hashvi'i kodesh Shabbat Shabbaton la'Hashem. Meaning, you will do melacha. This is what you should do. You will do melacha for 6 days. And by the way, on the 7th day is a Shabbos for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore, kol ha'oseh melacha yumat. The focus is the melacha. The melacha, the melacha, the melacha. You should be doing, you should be working, you should be acting for 6 days. By the way, on the 7th day, you shouldn't. Anybody who does act and work on the 7th day, you must. So maybe that's exactly what this is teaching us. This isn't just another pasuk about keeping Shabbos. This is a pasuk actually about doing melacha. It's about the 6 days. Before we go on to start doing the Mishkan, which is doing melacha, we know how risky, how complicated doing melacha is, building in those 6 days. We just saw how bad things can go when we start collecting our money and building things at a goal. We saw how it ended up last time when we gathered, by the way, the same word, vayikahel ha'am, ala Aaron, when they gathered around Aaron. Now Moshe is collecting us together again and teaching us this is how you should do it. And I'm going to teach you the secret not about Shabbos. I'm going to teach you a secret that Shabbos is the key to the 6 days. This isn't about Shabbos. This is the 6 days and how Shabbos influences those 6 days. And if we look at another interesting word, we're going to notice this. It doesn't say 6 days you shall work. It says Sheshet yamim te'aseh melacha. Te'aseh in Hebrew means the work shall be done. Shall be done by who? You should be doing it. Interesting, if we go on just a little bit more in the pasuk, it says anybody who does melacha. Here it is talking about you doing the melacha. Okay, it's a bad thing. You might. So the beginning, the 6 days, who's doing the melacha? Maybe this is really the key to understanding. Maybe what Shabbos is teaching us is that yes, for 6 days, you need to be doing melacha. As the Torah teaches us already back in Bereshit, we're put in this world, le'ovda u'leshomra. We're supposed to work in this world. We're supposed to protect the world. We're supposed to advance the world, but there's a way to do it. And the way to do it is the mindset of te'aseh melacha, is understanding that, as the Mishnah says, lo alecha amlacha ligmor kmo. The melacha is not all in your hands. You are playing a part. You are playing your part. When you go out and you do something and you build something, if you think it's all in your hands, you're missing it all. The melacha is being done. You're a part of it. You're a shaliach. You're a messenger. You're a part of this avodah. But the ability to act and to do in this world comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He is doing the melacha. You are playing your part and he fills his part. Only when you're working together can you actually achieve things. Can you build a Mishkan and not an Egel? When you start doing your own thing, you end up with Avodah Zarah. You end up with the Egel. But when you understand that everything you're doing in this world is not oseh, it's actually teaseh. You're doing your part, you're doing your best, but you're doing it with HaKadosh Baruch Hu holding your hand. That's when you'll achieve a Mishkan. And the way to do that is Shabbos. Because as the pasuk goes on to say, you know what happened Shabbos? Shabbos is Shabbat Shabbaton LaHashem. On Shabbos, God is resting. So how could you be working hand in hand with God if God is resting on Shabbos? If Hashem works for 6 days, then you work for 6 days. And again, if we look carefully, that's exactly what it says. In the 6 days, you're working together. Te'aseh melacha. It's happening together with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if someone works on Shabbos, kol ha'oseh bo melacha. He's working alone. He doesn't have HaKadosh Baruch Hu with him. He's alone. Stopping on Shabbos is exactly about recognizing that it's not about me. If Hashem stopped working, I have to stop. I can't continue. It's Shabbat LaHashem. How could I possibly do anything if Hashem's not here with me? When I understand that, this isn't the key to keeping Shabbos. We have many things about how to keep Shabbos. This is the lesson about how to live in this world. How to act for 6 days. Act for 6 days with the recognition that your ability to be there, to do what you do, it's only because you're doing what you're doing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when He rests, obviously, you have no other option but to rest. And this, I guess, is exactly the message that they need now. They know that they need to stop working in the Mishkan for Shabbos. It's not about telling me what I can't do and telling me what I need to do on Shabbos. It's about giving me the strength now when I'm about to actually start building the Mishkan. I need to understand how to do melacha. This lesson on Shabbos, as we said, is not about Shabbos. It's about the 6 days that get their strength and their influence and their koach from Shabbat.
Beautiful, exactly. And I think it's really important to emphasize, like you were saying, what exactly are we learning over here? What exactly is the main topic and the main subject that's discussed in these psukim? Because over here, really, we understand what the concept of melacha is. And like you were saying, melacha is not just working, is not just being an employee or carrying out tasks and doing things for something. It's not just the technical, physical side of doing labor. Melacha is a lot more than that, because in Hebrew, the word melacha is like the female version of the word malach. And we know malach is an angel, but it's also a messenger. And if a malach is a messenger, then melacha is your message that you have to bring into the world. Like most of the family names today are based on people's professions many generations ago, because the idea was that a person is their profession. The profession is what that person brings into the world and translates into reality into the world. And that's the purpose that person has to bring into this world. And really, that is what melacha is. Melacha is not just being an engineer or a lawyer or an accountant or a doctor or whatever. Melacha is a lot bigger than that. It's the full message you have to bring into the world. And like you were saying so truly, the melacha can only come into this world together with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So obviously, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu rested and told us to rest on Shabbos, it is not being done with Him when you work on Shabbos, when you go against His will to not do work on Shabbos. So this is what melacha is. And maybe like you were saying, this is what we're taught in these psukim here. It's not only about refraining from doing work on Shabbos, from doing technical things on Shabbos, but it's actually understanding the deep meaning of to have Shabbos, of to be holy, to climb to that holy level, is by taking that very physical and needed thing to do like labor and work and elevating it into a higher level of shlichut, of your purpose, not only just spending your 6 days to get your money into your bank at the end of the month, but actually bringing something into this world and creating something with a meaning for people. And there's so many things that we can say about Shabbos. Like we were saying, probably Shabbos is the most mentioned mitzvah in the Torah. And of course, the Talmud is full of mentionings of Shabbos. We have countless stories about big rabbis and Shabbos and treating Shabbos. And just to mention, there's a beautiful Netivot Shalom that says on the Gemara that says that Shabbos is weighed like all the Torah Kula. What does that mean? And he explains that the whole purpose of the Torah and the mitzvahs is to connect us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is to take our physical life in this world and give it a layer, give it a level of holiness, of pureness, of uplifting this world towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And says in Netivot Shalom, that's what really Shabbos is. On the most basic level of a person wants to start to feel that connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it can be done on Shabbos because everything around Shabbos, because everything we have Shabbos, because the way Shabbos is framed today in a certain frame, it allows you to step into that place where you feel the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu without even working that hard to feel it. And maybe this is what we see again in this week's Parasha is in order to get to that is stopping what you do during the week. But in order to feel a vacation, you have to work hard before. In order to feel rest, you have to have a strong workout beforehand. And maybe that's the idea again over here, is to understand that in order to actually have a fulfilling Shabbos, you have to translate and bring your purpose into reality during the week before. You can't just sit and mess around for an entire week and then expect to have a holy Shabbos. These two things are connected. You have to have a fulfilling week with fulfilling your purpose and your potential, and that will also enhance your Shabbos and bring your light into your Shabbos by not doing anything on Shabbos, by refraining on Shabbos. And also by refraining on Shabbos, that will give you the strength to continue the next week and to continue pushing. And again, building this layer after layer, this level after level. And maybe all this could also answer another question on these three psukim at the beginning of the Parsha, because we discussed the first two psukim where it talks about the Melacha. But then there's a third pasuk where it says, Lo tevahu esh b'chol moshvotechem. And really the Gemara, all Chazal already noticed that this pasuk is kind of out of place. Why does the Torah mention specifically the commandment of lighting fire on Shabbos? Why was it separated from all the other 39 melachas? It's a very big machloket. Very famous Gemaras about it. But when looking at that machloket between the two rabbis, you can see that there's two ways to view this commandment of setting fire, two ways to understand what fire in its fundamental basic is. Fire could be a terrible thing. It could be something that consumes all the good things around you and burns them and destroys them. And it can even go by itself and grows bigger and bigger and can bring even greater destruction, like we know from many times in history. But fire can also be a wonderful thing. Fire can heat you up in the cold. Fire can give you light in the dark. Fire can also take different ingredients and turn them into edible food. But obviously the question is, how do you treat this fire? How do you use it? How do you control that fire? Are you letting it spread by itself? Are you letting it grow by itself? Or are you using it for your purpose, for your meaning? And this is, again, everything we do in this world. Are we doing our work? Are we doing our labor? Are we doing what we're doing just in order to get a bigger physical perk in the end of the day? Is it because we want to fill some personal need that we have? Or are we doing what we're doing for a greater purpose, for a greater reason behind it? Are we taking these tools we have and are we using it towards greatness, towards building new things into this world and adding new meaning into this world? And maybe this is what these three psukim are about. The idea that connecting the Mishkan to the Melachot, the greatest purpose we have to build a house for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world, the greatest thing we can build, from that building, from that work, from that labor, we learn towards our daily labor, towards what we do in our day-to-day life, to show us that also what we do on our day-to-day life should have purpose in it, should have meaning in it, in order to get us to this higher level of sanctifying HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name in this world.
It's interesting what you're saying about these two sides of fire, really one that can burn when it's out of hand, which is, I'd say, chet ha'egel, and one that has its perfect place and time, not too much, not too little, everything is in its right place, which maybe represents the building of the Mishkan, which, as we know in the psukim that follow, the words that repeat over and over about Am Yisrael doing exactly as they were told. If you want to use fire, that's great, but that same fire, that melacha, can burn, but can achieve greatness if it's done correctly. But I think there's actually another thing about fire which connects to what we started with. Fire is the closest thing we have to creation, to bringing something that wasn't here and suddenly is here. Most of the other melachot that we're not allowed to do on Shabbos are building, our time, things that we're taking two existing things and putting them together. We're not bringing something that wasn't here and suddenly is. Maybe that's why on Yom Tov, even though we are allowed to light a fire, we light a fire from an existing fire, because the concept of bringing fire that wasn't here and suddenly is the closest concept to creating something new. And if the psukim here are emphasizing that our ability to do in this world is only yesh miyesh, is only when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created something, we take that yesh, we take that something that exists in the world, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in this world and has a purpose, and we use it and and we advance it with HaKadosh Baruch Hu hand in hand. But creating something yesh mi'ayin, that's God. Creating something out of nothing, that's for God to do. And when we do that on Shabbos, it's like we think we're our own gods. It's like we're creating our own gods. We're ignoring HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creation, and we think we're creating something new. And that maybe is most represented when on Shabbos we light a fire. That fire, that thing that's us creating something on our own, thinking we're going to do this on our own, is exactly what we're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Shabbos teaches us to recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu not on Shabbos. It teaches us to recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our entire life. That's why Shabbos is also considered as a testimony to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because by us not working on Shabbos, we recognize that everything we do and everything we live in is all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have, as you said, a mission in this world. We have things that we need to achieve. We are malachim, we are shlichim, we have stuff to do, but we only do that because HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us here to do that. We do that hand in hand with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then we can really achieve greatness, and then we can really achieve, even with our own hands, what seems unbelievable to achieve in a physical world is a house for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a house for God, a Mishkan. That's what this Parsha is teaching us just before we actually do those first steps of building the Mishkan.
Beautiful, beautiful. And of course, there's so much more to talk about Shabbos. There's so many levels, so many perushim, midrashim, and beautiful words were written about Shabbos throughout all the generations, because it is one of the more important mitzvahs we have and one of the more special mitzvahs that we have. If you had your Shabbos meal and Shabbos table, it's one of the more beautiful things to have in your life. But unfortunately, we're out of time, so we'll have to end here. We'll just leave it on that very most basic level of what Shabbos is. Maybe in the future we'll talk about it again. As usual, if you've liked this video, please feel free to like it on YouTube, comment below the video, and of course, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing right up here in the logo at the end of this video. And also, we'll just mention that on this channel on YouTube, we have a separate series of videos on the different Melachos of Shabbos. We'll link the first one from that series right now. Make sure you take a look. Shkoyach Yitzi.
Shkoyach Tuvia, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Shabbos Vayakhel. We're getting into the second Adar, the happier Adar. So, Mitzvah of Shabbos should be a month full of happiness to all of Am Yisrael.